There's something I noticed at the highest levels of competition. The difference between winning and losing is rarely talent. I've seen athletes with more skill lose to athletes with less, not because of technique, not because of fitness, but because one could regulate under pressure and the other couldn't. When I competed at the Olympic Games, I started to realize something. The real battle wasn't just physical, it was emotional. I'm Coach Craig Brown, Olympic Taekwondo athlete and founder of Maximizing Performance. Over the years, through my own competition, coaching athletes, and researching emotional intelligence across elite performers, one pattern kept showing up. The athletes who could manage themselves performed, the ones who couldn't struggled under pressure. The hidden separator is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence determines several things about performance, really. One of which is how you respond after a mistake. Let's say you committed an unforced error. Perhaps you kicked someone below the belt. Perhaps you kicked a little bit short and didn't land well balance wise, and your opponent just slipped out of the way and countered you. You know, how do you respond after a mistake like that? Perhaps that counter even hit you in the head and made you feel a bit shaken. Are you able to pick yourself back up? Or is that the start of the end? Is that the start of you making more mistakes, losing your composure, and now next thing you know, you're not just 3 points behind, you're 9 points behind, you're 12 points behind. Or can you actually turn it around? Can you keep your composure, make adjustments because of that mistake? Perhaps you realize now that your opponent's pretty crafty. They got good distance management, good reaction. So, you know, in the future you're going to be a bit more careful, and take your time and be more patient and more clinical when you make an attempt to score a point. If it was the fact that you kicked low, maybe you'd be a bit more careful in future, knowing that the referee's not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So you've got to tighten up the way you play. Another way in which emotional intelligence determines how you perform is whether you spiral after a bad call. Let's say you didn't kick low, but the referee gave you a gamjon for that act. Perhaps your opponent kicked you or hit you after the referee said stop. And maybe that left you a little bit concussed or shaken. How do you respond? Are you so frustrated with the referee and his incompetence on making that bad call? Does that impact the way you perform? Are you a little bit more from out of frustration? Do you start to compete a little bit more carelessly? Do you rush? Do you lose your composure? Or are you able to regain your composure, not let that affect you, put it behind you, and learn from it? Perhaps the way to learn from it would be the referee maybe is maybe not on your side, maybe he's not as a high level, as what you're used to, so you have to adapt to that. Another way in which it can impact your performance is whether fatigue controls you. Does your performance level and quality go down as your fatigue level rises? Or are you able to make adaptations where, okay, as you know your body and yourself and how fatigue impacts you, can you adjust the way you compete, your strategy, so that you can conserve energy, expend less, and fight very, intelligently defensive to the point where, you can still win and perform well? Another way in which your emotional intelligence will impact your performance is your ability to read your opponent. Can you read when they're tired, when they're fatigued? Are you able to observe and observe their physical symptoms, or their behavior? Has their reaction time slowed since the first round? Are they backing off a bit more, than before? Maybe you hit them hard and they didn't like it, and now they've started to be a bit more cautious? Can you see that in their body language? Or perhaps they scored a point on you and they feel empowered and now they're becoming more aggressive. Can you read that? And can you use that information to make a decision to change the way you compete so that you can still be successful? And lastly, emotional intelligence is going to determine whether you collapse under pressure or elevate. How do you respond? Are you going to raise your game when the pressure comes, when the going gets tough? Are you going to be one of those tough guys that gets going? Or is the pressure going to make you kind of shrink, and then once the pressure rises, is your performance going to go down? The truth of the matter is, if you can't regulate, it becomes very, very difficult for you to execute on a consistent basis. In this course, we're going to break down what emotional intelligence really is, not theoretically, but as it applies to combat athletes, and more importantly, how to develop it.